I try.
And please sit in wonder and awe of the wonderful names that our runners have chosen. Oh, and they are off.
Awesome.
So,
Let's do this.
yeah, first thing to note is the beginning of the game is one of the most unforgiving parts of this run because it gives you a tutorial fight, but unfortunately it's completely RNG. You have default armor, or sorry, default weapon, and there's really you can only press A and hope for the best. You're looking for, I believe, a crit and a regular hit, but if you get a miss or the enemy gets a crit, you can actually die right at the beginning to this very first fight. So, good luck to both our runners.
Yeah, first boss is biggest boss.
Yeah, next.
Because if he crits you even once, that's it. You have to redo the fight pretty much, unless you get really lucky and you get a crit off. And it looks like Jighart did, so good job to him. Wow, nice RNG there.
Yep, taking the lead right away. But something we definitely have to note is this game is extraordinarily RNG heavy. So just because one racer has a lead at any point, that can very quickly change at any point, especially up to and including Pazuzu's Tower and even the last floor of Doom Castle. So yeah, the lead can change at any point. So we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, but the beginning of the game here, you're going to see Jighart and Cyclone go off to get their first party member, which is going to be Kaylee. And we're not going to have her for too long, but she's going to help us get through the level forest so that we can get through into the next area of the game. We're also going to be picking up the first of Benjamin's spells here, which is the Cure spell, which is going to come in handy in the layer dungeon, in the Bone dungeon. And we're going to get to see a nice little glitchy thing about the magic in this game as we get through the level forest.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of fun things with this game, and especially with the programming of some of the bosses. And also seeing Cyclone changing his menu display immediately to figure from scale, meaning he can actually see the numbers rather than just seeing these bars. It is completely runner preference as to which they choose, but the majority of runners do choose to change it. So we'll see if Jighart chooses to change it later or not.
Yeah, a lot of them don't, just because it does save a couple of seconds, depending, of course. But they did change the battle speed for sure, which will make the battle speed go a lot faster, even though they're still going to want to mash as much as possible.
Yeah, and something to note, like if you have your commands exactly where you want them, you do want to press and hold A. But you need to mash through all the text boxes, even in the battle itself, to try and gain some speed. So if everything goes well, I believe you can be to this first boss here within the 3-minute mark. So, and you're constantly depending on your partners in this game for different things depending on where you are and who your partner is. But one thing you're always going to depend them on is kind of healing. Our runners at no point during these runs are going to pick up the life spell, but all of our partners come with life. So we're going to depend on them to keep us from staying dead. And so in that vein, it is very important that we keep our partners alive, because if they die, we die most of the time.
Right, and now here you can see on Jighart's screen a nice little glitch about this. So the Minotaur isn't really an undead creature, but it seems to be programmed like one, and there are a lot of monsters going as you go through the game that are programmed this way. And life will actually just kind of one-shot them, and it's really nice. You don't have to worry about anything else. Hit them with life, and boom, they're gone.
Yeah, it's definitely really quite helpful. And so now we head up. Story-wise, we took Kaylee with us because, you know, she had an axe and was nearby and likes trees or something. And she gets poisoned by that boss, and we're like, oh, but we know where an elixir is. Let's go pick it up and cure her. But we show up, and unfortunately, there's an empty chest. And this guy Tristram shows up and says, yeah, I took it. If you help me get this other item I have, I will give you the elixir. And you're like, fine, since you don't have enough money to just buy it off him outright. So it's kind of a theme. First thing here in the Bone Dungeon is you see they are skipping that first treasure chest. You're going to see a lot of that, especially in the first kind of half of the game, because both of the runners are setting up for a very specific item manipulation glitch, which is going to skip an entire section of the game. So, and it depends on having specific items in specific locations in their inventory.
Right, and unfortunately, even though Tristram looks so cool, he's got ninja stars, he has terrible accuracy, and he misses a lot. I've actually had runs die because of Tristram's missing. But what we're going to be looking for as we go through the Bone Dungeon, because it is a beginning dungeon and our HP is still pretty low, are groups of 2 or 1 monster. So if you saw on Cyclone's screen, he got a group of 3 of the worms and he ran away. So depending on different times you enter the battle, you can get different formations of monsters. So it is preferable not to have 3 monsters when you're going into these formations, and it looks like poor Cyclone is not having the best of luck today.
No, and again, that could change later on, but yeah, it's going to be much easier, and you see there the accuracy right there with Cyclone. It's only 1 skeleton, it should not be a problem. However, Tristram doing his best to make it difficult for everybody. So, this is one of the few and only dungeons where we are going to be kind of manipulating the party formations as we are. Later on, it both doesn't matter so much, and it gets more difficult to run from the encounters. I think it might actually be impossible to not run from an encounter in the Bone Dungeon, though I could be wrong. It's definitely difficult to not run.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever had a missed run. I don't know if it's impossible at any place, but yeah, it's very hard not to be able to run here, luckily, because since we haven't done any major skips and your levels are still relatively okay for where you are, the monsters won't outpace you or anything like that yet.
We've got our next set of 3 there for Cyclone. I'm telling you, that RNG luck.
Yeah, so, this game is very, very RNG heavy, so...
We'll definitely see there. One good thing Tristram did do for us, though, is he did sell us the bombs, which is great both for kind of movement, tech, and access, but it's an incredibly powerful and useful weapon. Seeing there, Jighart picking up his first item, which is a set of seeds. They're actually going to be kind of looking for those bigger encounter packs once they pick up the seed, at least for a couple of encounters, in order to perform an item duplication glitch, which involves running away from the battle in order to duplicate one of an item. So they'll just do it whenever is convenient. They're not going to purposely farm for that, but they are going to need extra seeds for this run.
Right, because once we do get to pick up our next partner, she is very magic dependent, and you need to have the seeds to replenish her a few times as we go through the next area.
Yeah, exactly. And Jighart picking up the Quake spell. Runners don't always pick that up, but it can be incredibly useful to have as a backup and to fight some of the later enemy formations. For sure. So we are reaching the first boss here, and he is actually undead, and we can't use our life trick against him this time, but he is weak to cure, so we are going to be using that on him. Unfortunately, the cure spell does have a chance to miss, as we saw on Jighart's screen. So just have the strategy here is basically just keep casting cure until it runs out, and then either use quake or bombs depending on what you have, and cure Tristram up once he gets to below half HP.
Right, and unfortunately the Flamosaur seems to be targeting Ben, which is not always the best thing because Ben dies in just a couple of hits, and you really want him to be able to knock out those cures because the cures are going to do more damage unless Tristram is lucky enough to crit. The cures are going to do much more damage than his ninja stars will.
Yeah, and speaking of a crit, our nice Tyrannosaurus here did actually... Flamosaurus, actually did crit Ben, so again, I have had it happen in a fight as well, where Tristram can run out of life, so you don't want that to happen, but that tends to only happen in a particularly bad fight. Also seeing Cyclone using life to heal rather than to just bring back from death. So it is used as a general curing spell. It will cure anyone to full, so it can save time that way. Plus, it does cure some status ailments as well. So definitely an extraordinarily useful spell.
Yeah, life is good that way. Unfortunately, it only does heal the status effects in battle. If you use it in the menu outside of any battle, it will just restore you to full.
Yeah, exactly. So, in beating that boss, you did free the first crystal, and Tristram got the goodie he was looking for. So happily gave you the elixir. Yep. And then I was like, what is that called? And making sure to pick up the sand coin, as that's going to be extraordinarily important for progressing in the game. Also saw Jighart then picked up his next item of the cure chest. Cyclone is not doing that, but he is. You can pick it up on your way out. That chest you jumped over right at the beginning of the dungeon is another set of cure spells. So it kind of depends on what you're planning to do, whether you're planning to get those explosives in the top shelf or not, as to where you're going to pick that up.
Yeah, that was interesting. I didn't even know. I know there were cures over there, but I didn't know there were bombs up there.
I knew about the bombs because I pick up the bombs myself all the time, but I only found out about the cures on the last race I commentated, actually. I was like, oh, there's cures there. That's cool.
That's always a good thing.
Yeah.
But now that we have the elixir, we're going to make our way back to Foresta, and we're going to fix Kaylee up because we're going to need her a little bit later on. And in addition to picking up the cures on the way out, we're also going to pick up the small shield to give us a little extra defense for the battles to come.
Yeah, and as you're going to start seeing as the run goes further, Ben kind of gets more and more underpowered, so we kind of need every little benefit that we can get. So while we're not going to go particularly out of our way to pick up things like that, anything which is on our way at all, we are definitely going to be picking up to try and help with that. So now that we have, they've picked up the items and they're leaving the dungeon, next stop is to go back to Foresta in order to cure poor sick Kaylee. And that's all we have to do there, though. Once we've done that, we just leave. We're like, okay, you're good, out. And leaving and going right up to Focus Tower, which is the big tower that connects all the different areas in the game. So for each coin that you pick up, you gain access through Focus Tower to another part of the world. So you're going to see some fun manipulation around those coins as the runs go on. But for now, we're going to take this neat little secret passage and ignore the old man. That's another theme you're going to see.
Yeah, there is only one time in the entire game that you have to speak to him or you end up soft-locking the game because he has to be spoken to with Phoebe, and I actually learned that the hard way playing the randomizer and not doing the speed run.
No. Is that where he gives you the wake water?
Yep, that's the one.
Yep. So now that we've cured Kaylee, she advised us that we should go talk to Spencer. He's a gentleman who has a lot of good information, and he's going to help us out. And so we go into Libra Temple, as that's apparently where we can go to help him or find him. And instead we find Phoebe, who is his granddaughter, and we find out that since this area has become frozen, Spencer, who seems to live under Phoebe's house for some reason, is frozen in and is trapped. So she is trying to do whatever she can to melt all the ice and free her grandfather from his, trapped state under her house.
Wow, that NPC troll, man.
Oh,
See,
yeah.
at least unlike in other games with NPCs, you can jump over these NPCs.
It's really helpful. You don't have to wait for them to move. You can be like, okay, you're in my way, out. So you're going to start seeing pretty immediately the beautiful thing about Phoebe, and that's if you have just a single party type, like enemy type, you leave her on auto, and she's just going to auto cast spells in this dungeon, fire, to take care of them. And it's incredibly useful, and it makes it easy to deal with these different enemy formations. The only kind of difference is when there's multiple enemies in a party, you do have to put her on manual because she won't manually attack all of them with a spell, even though she's perfectly capable. These sandworms also being an exception, as they don't like fire in the same way. So Quake can be used against them, as can Phoebe's Thunder if you don't have it. So one of the most challenging things about these runs is really just learning all of the enemy formations.
Yeah, that definitely takes the longest, and sometimes some of us still have, the occasional brain fart, like, oh, what was I supposed to do again? But the good thing is there are multiple strategies, as Natara was just explaining to you, that you can use for a lot of the enemy formations, especially as you get later into the game and you have more spells and stuff at your disposal.
Absolutely. And I just want to note, Spencer may not be living under there, but it's a little more funny if you think he is. Yeah, he's digging a tunnel because he's trying to save his friend Captain Mac, who has been trapped on a side of a mountain in his boat when the water went away.
Right. And if you notice, once we had that little cutscene where Ben fell down off the cliff and Phoebe went down after him to kind of laugh at him. It's like, oh yeah, I have these cat claws, so here, you can take them and you can climb. And she ends up with the Bow of Grace. And the Bow of Grace is kind of a nice little weapon. It actually does a fair amount of damage for a ranged weapon, and she can crit with it fairly often, which is going to be very useful for the boss of this particular dungeon coming up, the Squidite.
Yeah, and she definitely does more damage with it than she does the claw, so it's just better for everyone that Ben has the claw and that she uses her bow.
Right, and there you can see that Jig is duplicating seeds here just for the sake of trying to get a nicer worm fight, but he doesn't seem to be having any luck.
No, those worms are not very nice at all. I believe the worms have a chance to confuse you, so, and if you have 3, you can't kill them all in one turn, so you're kind of at the whim of whatever the worms want to do. So, well, at least he got his seeds duplicated, but, oh, and he did have some good luck with those worms.
Yeah, I think there's only one more worm fight in this dungeon, so it shouldn't be too bad. And again, this is another case where even though we have 3 centaurs, Phoebe's like, I'm not sure my magic is going to be proficient enough to kill them. But, by switching her from auto to manual, we can just say, hey, use this, you're good, and we'll knock them out.
Yeah, once you kind of... Each of the different partner members have a different AI. It's not consistent AI across the board, so you kind of have to get used to what each of your partners will do in each situation. So luckily, Phoebe tends to have some of the better AI in the game, while I think Kaylee has some of the worst.
No, there's no argument about that. She definitely has some of the worst.
Okay, good. That's what I thought. So... yeah, so we definitely... just another thing which makes Phoebe best partner.
She is Phoebe, indeed.
That is correct, she is.
But they're reaching the inner parts of this dungeon. Just a couple more battles, and then they'll be in the last of the screens before the Squidite fight. So the idea is that Phoebe's like, hey, I know where there's this wake water that we can use to try to revive the village. So we need the Libra Crest, though, to get to it. So she's like, hey, the Libra Crest is in this cave, let's go get it. And that is pretty much why we are going through this wintry cave here.
Yep. And we'll see how successful that is in a little bit. In the meantime, you should give our runners a follow. They're working really hard at this run, and hopefully they're going to give us a good couple of hours of entertainment here. And if you are enjoying our commentary, I've also linked us in here, except my Twitch is wrong, because I go by a different name in Discord than I do in... There you go. To make things difficult for everyone. No, that's what I got. You have different names. It's the hard life. So you're seeing, again, they're just fighting whichever monsters are in the way and dodging everything else. Not so much at this point, but as the run goes on, we're focusing a lot on experience manipulation. We want to try and make sure that Ben is at a certain level for the end of the game. So, yeah, we definitely want to do our best not to fight anything extra that we don't have to, but as we'll see in about an hour, Pazuzu's Tower does not always agree with that strategy.
Oh, for sure. And the partners are fixed at a stationary level and a stationary amount of hit points and everything else. So regardless of however many fights you do or do not do, their level and their abilities are not going to change at all. And even if Ben happens to die during a fight, he will still be the only one that gets the experience. And there on Jighart's screen was that lovely crit I was talking about.
Oh, it's always so nice. So one thing I really do love about this game is how all the enemies, and especially the bosses, have different kind of animations for what stage of health they're in. So you can really kind of see that with Squidite just constantly changing how he looks depending on his health.
I believe the bosses go through the mini bosses go through 3 different phases. The regular monsters go through 2 different phases. I forget how much the regular big bosses do.
Yeah, I think most of the bosses it's 3 or 4.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think off the top of my head how many times the ice golem melts.
Oh my god. Well, it's especially hard with the ice golem because he cures himself as well. So sometimes it's like up, down, up, down. You're like, what form are you in?
But we're going to backtrack our way out. We've got the Libra Crest. We're going to go get the Wake Water, and we're going to save Aquaria.
Yeah! So, a really fun
what could
thing...
possibly go wrong?
What could possibly go wrong? So, while it's a downside that you do have to fight all of these enemies, there's no running, there's no dodging, you've just got to fight the enemies. It does mean when you're leaving, before we get the exit spell, you have a nice, calm, wonderful walk on the way out, because you know you've defeated everything on your way in. So it is kind of one side perk to that unfortunate feature of the game.
Right, so at least your sacrifice for no random encounters is pretty low, considering that they don't respawn afterwards. They only respawn if you leave the dungeon completely and try to come back in.
Yep, and so bad news for Phoebe. It turns out the Spring of Life has dried up, but oh hey, the old man's here. So, as RPG Chick mentioned, this is the only time we will talk with him, and he gives us a bottle of the water, the Wake Water, from this spring. So, we're gonna take it to Aquaria and see if we can save the town. Who cares about all this surrounding area? As long as we get the town unfrozen, we are okay.
Of course.
There's no way it could possibly go wrong. Except it does. And I'm not really quite sure why she thought a tiny little jar would unfreeze the whole town, but sadly they discover that that little bit of wake water is not enough, and that instead they are going to have to free the crystal.
Right, so they're going to have to make their way up the frozen waterfall and into the ice pyramid. So if you have ever played this game casually, or you played it a lot as a kid like most of us did, there is like a particular way usually you move those ice pillars, and basically it requires you to go up and around the left side and then go up and around the right side into the center to defeat the snow crab. But because we're speedrunners and we need to go fast, we need to skip part of that other side of the dungeon. So you're going to see a nice little nifty way, if you haven't ever seen this game speedrun before, that we can skip the top upper right-hand corner of this dungeon.
And it's great, and we'll see more like bigger skips as such as the game goes on. But in terms of dungeons, once we're in a dungeon, I think this is probably one of the biggest in-dungeon skips. Especially because it wasn't developer intended for us to use this jumping puzzle this way, but they also didn't really work very hard to prevent it. Unfortunately, Jighart did push his block too far in a way that he could not fix, because you cannot pull those blocks, you can only push them. So it meant he had to leave and come back in, which does put Cyclone in the lead.
Yeah, that was very unfortunate, but it's probably just nerves, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, it's there's so much you have to take care of here and pay attention to. So again, as we mentioned earlier, a little slip like that means nothing. Like, there is no way to really conclusively determine the winner until after the second last boss of the game, which is Zoo, immediately before the Dark King. So until then, it's truly anybody's race.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, because when you get to the later game, the enemies can start one-shotting you, and Zoo is big on that, so...
Zoo, I once in an actual tournament battle fought Zoo 11 times, so hopefully no one has that kind of RNG.
I sincerely hope not.
Oh yeah. So you see here, by pushing those blocks, we're right in front of the boss, but there's treasure here, so we want to get that heal spell first, because that is incredibly useful. And now it's boss time. So I personally love this boss. He's pretty great. So I think the strategy for this fight is fire spell from Phoebe, or no, at least at the beginning.
You're right, fire spell from Phoebe to get rid of the hags on either end, and then we're gonna switch her to lightning because that is the crab's weakness.
Yeah, and using bombs with our ever so wonderful Ben.
Yeah, it depends on the runner. Some people use bombs, and some people use axe. The only real benefit to using the axe is that the axe kind of has a chance to do a crit, but it also has a chance to miss. Yes. So it just depends on your preference.
It depends on whether you want to take the chance on speed and doing more damage, or whether you want to risk, go for the safety and not risk the misses. So, yeah, no, for sure.
I love that the crab just goes rabid in the middle of the fight.
He's just like, I'm so unhappy. I'm gonna blow bubbles. Bubble. He's a bubble crab. Wait, what? And so Phoebe's much nicer than Tristram, and when we need new bombs, she just gives them to us rather than selling them to us. Because, Phoebe.
She would have given them to us before the battle.
That's right. Yeah, that would have made her really nice. She's sneaky like that.
But here, getting into the ice pyramid, so there's a couple of dungeons in here that are a little bit longer than other dungeons, and I'd say this is the third longest dungeon in the game. It is a bit of a plow through, and here on Cyclone screen it looks like, oh my god, we got a random encounter, but you said there were no random encounters for this game. So in this pyramid, the monsters are actually invisible, and if you were doing 100%, you would go all the way over to the right side of the pyramid and you would pick up the magic mirror, some magical wind would blow, and the monsters would appear. But we don't have time for that. So we know where the monster placement is going to be, we know what they're going to be, and we just go for it.
Exactly. So it's, again, one of those extra bonuses of the fixed enemy locations. So, yeah, we ain't got time for extra items, so we're going to wander around. And the problem comes in is if you misstep a bit in certain places, sometimes you can run into extra ones, but it's not too bad for that here. Now, you saw both Jig and Cyclone opened that chest with the refreshers. That is our next item in order to get for our item manipulation that we will be doing later. The chest next to it, right now, had they picked it up, would contain arrows, but as soon as Phoebe leaves, which she is going to do at the end of this dungeon, it will swap to just containing explosives, which is going to be incredibly potentially important, as we need, after this dungeon, to have 10 bombs in order to do the next section. So if we have used too many bombs during here or on the boss, as they are a backup item for fighting the boss, it is a perfect place to go pick them up. And another really good thing about those brown chests is they do refill every time you leave the place you're in. So you're going to see a bit of abuse of that in Focus Tower with an explosive chest that's in there.
Right. And of course, Cyclone is really not having the best of luck with monster formation. So the idea as you're going through the pyramid, even though we did duplicate the seeds, is you kind of want to conserve Phoebe's lightning spell, her thunder spell rather, for certain battles. And anytime there's a Lamia in the formation, you can see it on Jighart's screen as well. The lightning is her weak point, so we have Phoebe use that on all the enemies. But the battles are, if they're nice battles, they would have 3 mages in them, and therefore we would only use her fire spell, which she has more charges of. So this game, in terms of magic, works kind of like Final Fantasy 1 does, where they have a set amount of charges, and then you can use the seeds to replenish those charges. And it might mean, unfortunately, that they might have to end up duplicating extra seeds because they need to have at least one seed by the time they get to pick up the heal spell in towards the end of the not the heal spell. I'm sorry, the heal potions towards the end of the dungeon.
Exactly. So, and like RPG Chick said, they can at any point duplicate more seeds so long as they haven't used them all up, but that does waste some time. So, but it's also in some ways better to duplicate a minimum amount of seeds and then just duplicate extra later if you need them and hope you don't need them.
Right, and again, another very not nice formation with both the crab and the eye here.
Yeah, hopefully he's getting all these bad encounters out of the way early so he can have a much better time later on. But we'll just have to see how that goes. But again, you're seeing a lot of bomb usage here. So because especially in this particular path, most of the enemies along here are weak to those bombs. So you're both trying, you need to use them because you don't want to not beat these enemies, but you are trying to conserve them a bit as well. So you're seeing a lot in this dungeon of they're hitting these switches which are there, and one of the mechanics they like to do in this game is not only are they giving you different weapons so you have different effects during the battles, there's opportunities to use a lot of them outside of battle, like use the bombs to free up things, axes to cut down trees, things like that. So it's definitely a really interesting mechanic, and in this dungeon, they're really big on those switches. So it's not too bad as long as you know where you're going, but missing as much as just one switch can have you wasting a lot of time in backtracking.
Right, and this floor is particularly awful about it because, as you see, you have to go all the way over to the right side, and there's a whole bunch of monsters, and then you have to go all the way over to the left side, and there's even more monsters. So, like, this is one of the worst floors in the pyramid.
Yeah, it definitely is. So, you just send your bombs, hope for good enemy formations, and away you go. So there's some good items that they are going to be picking up in this dungeon, which makes it good as well. Oh, definitely not as bad as the tree, but definitely long.
Yeah, the tree is definitely the longest dungeon of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Even with a floor 2 Pazuzu, that tree is just awful.
Yeah, because it never changes. You always know it's going to be that long no matter what you do. At least Pazuzu's tower has a chance of being much shorter. Right. And it's pretty easy, like the layout is pretty basic, at least for the first half of Pazuzu's, while the tree is just a maze, just from start to finish. It's just a pure maze.
Oh yeah, for sure. And if unfortunately with certain things as you're walking along, so you use the L and the R button to switch between your weapons for different uses, as Natara was speaking about. Unfortunately, though, for some reason the game has a program that you cannot walk and switch weapons at the same time.
Yeah, it really is kind of that beginner's Final Fantasy mechanic in there. While there's definitely some fun things in there, you can kind of see how they weren't thinking about more experienced players for some of these things. So yeah, it's definitely not super fast. So you kind of have to pick and choose your moment to switch your weapons around.
Right, and I learned from Bowie that you do not want to switch your weapons while you are falling because apparently you can soft lock the game that way.
Oh wow, I did not know that. So we're all learning something new today. Yeah, this game is, especially with the way some of the glitches we do are pretty particular. Oh no, Cyclone fell! But thankfully he meant to fall. So there are going to be some sections, both in this dungeon and in future dungeons, where there are no firm walls. If you walk too far, you're going to fall to the floor below. And thankfully, though, we are going to abuse that. And in this case, we're doing it to pick up our last item needed for the item manipulation, which was the heal potions. And we're also going to pick up the chest up above, which is, I believe, the noble armor. So again, picking up that little bit of extra defense, and I think that one might also come with some status ailment protections.
Right, the noble armor is going to give them protection against water spells, which, considering that we're just about to get to the ice golem, is going to come in super handy.
Yes, it is. Yeah, that ice golem he's pretty mean. He's definitely, I wouldn't even put him up there as to one of the worst bosses, but he definitely is a bit of a jerk. So, it's never fun. So now Cyclone, now that he's fallen once, now he has to, play serious time here and try not to fall off this path. And while that should be easy, many runners all you have to do is stop paying attention for one moment and you are off the side and you have to walk all the way around. So it's super easy to do, like so many things in this game.
I've fallen off of there in a race. It's terrible.
Yep, I think I don't know that I have, but I've definitely done other equally silly things, so. I think, the one I tend to do all the time, but especially in races, is with Captain Mac's ship. Oh, I'm at Doom Castle, we're good, let's just press A again and go all the way back. Oh, that's another good time waster. You're like, okay, I'm gonna sit through this boat again. And for a third time, let's do it.
You'll see some of the players who have fallen before, like myself, they'll be very careful going around the actual corners. You'll see them slow down. And the same thing as they get close to the ice golem floor, because that also has a windy path that you can fall off of. The nice thing is, though, is once you're past the initial gap, you can just jump to the ice golem without any issue. But we typically don't want to jump. Jumping actually takes an extra frame, which is stupid as heck, but it does.
Especially because it's so cool. I tell you, I would jump everywhere. There would be no walking in this game ever if it weren't actually slower. But sadly it is. So we're bombing through the floor and falling on purpose. This is required in order to progress in the dungeon. And of course, more switch puzzle and more falling. You're kind of seeing a theme here. Welcome to, the ice balance.
And the interesting thing is regardless of which side you fall in those little ice blocks in the center, it doesn't seem to matter because you always seem to end up in exactly the same place to hit that final switch down at the bottom.
Yeah, exactly. So it can be really handy that way. And it's not all falling works that way. Like, there's other areas where it actually does matter where you fall because you will end up in different areas depending on where you fall and can waste some time that way.
Right, that's very true, depending on, of course, if you want to pick up extra bombs on your way out, because I know there are some bombs in that area where we got the heals and the noble armor.
Mm-hmm. And now that we have picked up the Knight Sword, for most battles now we can actually do without our bombs. We can use the sword instead, as it does a good amount of damage. And I'm with Elmagus' suggestion. We're doing a jump percent category. You walk, you forfeit.
The nice thing about that sword is also going to be that it's going to give us a little bit of extra speed. So if we run into a situation later on where we do need to run, having the sword equipped makes it more likely, not definite, but more likely than having any of the other pieces of equipment on then at the time.
Yeah, so here's our jumpy path, and as you see from Cyclone, you literally just don't have to walk it. You just jump the whole way. So, no, you go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was agreeing with you merely.
Yep. Okay. So we're to the Ice Golem, who is a bit of fun. Neither of these racers picked up the fire spell, which was in the focus tower on their way to this the Aquaria area. So in the strategy for this fight is going to be Phoebe is going to cast fire and Ben is going to use bombs. So if you did take the time to pick up the fire spell, then you'd have both using the fire spell until Ben ran out. And you probably also noticed both of the runners made sure to use up their last seed, both to make sure that Phoebe is full of fire spells because she needs them, but also because we specifically want an empty space there for the upcoming item glitch.
Right, exactly. And without that empty spot, if it was in a different place, it would completely alter the effects and the results of the item duplications and manipulations that we want to do.
Exactly, and while there are some backups in Fireberg, where we're going to be heading next, it does take some time in order to pick those up and rearrange your inventory, because you have to literally use up all of your items if you want to rearrange it, so not too good. So we're seeing here the ice golem is slowly melting, but when he uses that kind of waterfall spell on them, he is draining life from them. So it is possible to see him go from like a melted form back up to a previous animation, which is interesting. But not going to see that on Cyclone's screen, as he has defeated the boss.
Yeah, that was a really nice fight.
That was excellent. Yeah, this guy can be, again, he's not a hard boss, but he's not a nice boss.
Right. As soon as he gets below that certain HP mark, he really spams that water recovery spell for himself.
Yeah, he does. Now, one thing you also want to make sure is to not forget to pick up that river coin. And then you start falling. Again, doing it on purpose. And after the first falling down the pit, you do want to make sure to move to your right by one in order to, so you fall down into the right area right in front of the door there. I did notice on a previous race when someone didn't move over and just walked right down, they did fall into the same room, but they were on the left side, so they did have to walk all the way around again. So again, that's why it does matter where you fall down.
Right, just little time saves here and there, nothing major, but still helpful and nonetheless.
Absolutely, every little bit that you can do to just kind of optimize your run. So now that they're done, again, they're going to walk out, and thankfully for both of these runners, this should be the last dungeon that they actually walk out of, because the next place we're heading to is to a battlefield, and the reward for clearing out this particular battlefield is going to be the exit spell, which is not only going to be incredibly useful for not walking, because walking is slow, we're going to abuse it horribly in order to defeat enemies in weird and wonderful ways, because it is extraordinarily powerful, and you don't get XP for the enemies that you use exit on, but we're not concerned about that whatsoever.
Right, exactly. This is the point in the game where we're kind of starting to get very concerned about how high Ben's level actually gets, because depending on what his end game level is when you reach the final boss is going to affect how you defeat the final boss. So the lower it is, kind of the better it is.
And Cyclone here now has reached the exit battlefield, and unfortunately, the first two battles he gets are the exact formation he needs to run away from, because there are only two battle formations you can get in this battlefield. We want the one which is just the Fanquid, because you just use your bomb and then it's dead right away, which is why we need 10 bombs. We don't want to risk doing anything with the Sphinx there, as it is incredibly powerful and really mean. So we just don't want to waste our time. You saw that on the turns where they get a Sphinx is in it and gets to go first, they tend to confuse you, which makes the fight not fun at all. So it's, again, completely up to RNG as to how many times they're going to have to run away in order to get their ideal battles.
Right, the average is going to be about 3 squids. 3 squids, good job, brain. 3 sphinxes. But it can be a lot more, it can be a lot less. It is possible to have absolutely no sphinxes in the course of these 10 fights. It's rare, but it is possible.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it would be great if you could have 3 squids. You're just like, we're done. They're just like, the game's done with even trying. It's just like, here goes squids.
But yes, once these 10 battles are cleared out, the exit spell will be our reward, and we can move on finally to the next area of the game.
I hear rumors that there is somewhere in here is a fire area, but I don't know about you. I haven't seen much about that.
I don't know, like, there's this little piece we go on, and the earth kind of shakes, and it looks kind of dead, but I don't really know anything about fire and volcanoes and stuff. I never saw it.
Me neither. I think some people are trying to lead us astray, trying to make us think there's this extra area, because as you're gonna see, we haven't seen it, and neither will you. And it's going to be beautiful. It's one of my favorite parts about this run is just that the magic of the item manipulation glitch, which just allows you to skip a whole quarter of the game. It's just like, nope. And it's a part of the game which is particularly not very nice.
It looks like Cyclone only had the average amount of squids, if I counted correctly. I think he only had 3.
Which is great.
But Jighart looks like he's up to 4 at this point.
Yeah, no.
So now we're getting into, as Natara said, the big skip. So the reason that we picked up the items in the order that we picked them up, the reason that we used up the seeds is going to be right here. So the game has this very strange mechanic where you can actually buy 0 items and things from shopkeepers. And we're going to buy, at some point when we get up to Fireburg, we're going to buy 0 seeds from the nice shopkeeper who is very unaware of what we plan to do with them. And the inventory isn't quite sure what to do with 0 seeds, so when we use them, it kind of underflows the seeds. We get 255 in our inventory, and the inventory freaks out a little bit at the same time and gives us one of the coins that we need to progress further in the game. And it puts it in the slot where we had the cure potions. So once we've done this, we go and buy 19 cure potions, and the inventory's like, oh my god, I don't know what to do with those. You just replace those with coins. And it gives us more coins, and hence, no fire area.
And then voila, we are out. And once again, or I won't say once again, but starting already to abuse our wonderful, beautiful exit spell. So, you do have to walk all the way through Focus Tower again, but definitely worth it. As we now get to go to our newest door. Like that, I don't even know why we had to pick up the river coin. Man, waste of time.
Good God, having to pick up useful and useless things. It's just out of the way. Go away, coins.
Yeah, exactly. So you do have to make sure to pick up those coins. But I believe that is the last coin that we have to pick up.
You are correct in that. Yes.
So, because the rest of them we glitch.
Right. So now, even though we skipped this area, somehow Ben has a sandwich in his pocket.
Oh man!
And
hey, sometimes you just get hungry.
I know. And this mummy comes out of nowhere. He's like, "I want that sandwich," and he looks at it, like, "Oh, it's not that good of a sandwich." And I posted that sandwich for you. The fridge. Now the sandwich is all soggy. I can't eat it. Ugh.
Why would you waste it?
Exit the mummy away, because how dare you make my sandwich all disgusting and soggy.
Yep, if you didn't want it, you could have just given it back. But no, you had to throw it away. So, random dude, who's apparently a sandwich, and named Ruben, falls. We would have gotten to know him in the fire area, but we ain't got time for that. But hey, guess who's back? Everyone's favorite guy who doesn't actually hit things.
You sound way too happy about that.
No, not at all. But, you don't have him for very long, thankfully. Just for a few fights here in the level forest. But this is another area where you really kind of see how Tristram can be not so helpful. Not only does he tend to not hit, he's just not particularly useful against a lot of these enemies in the level forest. So the smaller encounter packs are definitely something you want, but not something that our runners are going to be purposely manipulating. And just for these few fights until we can get rid of him.
Right, he's strong enough to take out the ghost in one shot, which you can see on Cyclone screen, but he actually takes 3 hits to fell down one of the mummies.
Yeah, it's not particularly helpful there. So, and especially where a lot of these enemies like to do petrify, as Cyclone is very nicely demonstrating for us.
Fair, unfortunately for him, yeah.
Yeah. Jeez, and a missed exit spell. Yeah, he's not having a lot of luck. And again, this is why the level forest, even though I think you fight no more than 5 things in here, can be a little bit of a struggle, because with Tristram, these guys are just not very helpful. They're really mean with the status ailments between sleep and petrify, and they can just totally destroy your party if they so wish it.
Yeah, and this will be the last battle that Cyclone has to do before going to get rid of Tristram, so to speak.
Excellent. I mean, but we'll miss him so much.
Oh yes, it'll be a horrible loss.
Yeah. Yes, it would be. But that's okay because we're gonna replace him with our backup best partner, which is Kaylee.
Yeah, this game is very interesting. The girls in this game are very powerful, and the boys are not. It's definitely the ultimate girl power game.
It absolutely is. Yeah, both Kaylee, even though Kaylee has the worst AI, she is incredibly useful when you're directing her. So, yeah, you're definitely pretty happy to have her in your party. And story-wise, we are somehow, since we've last seen Kaylee, she got sick or worn out or something once again on her way to come to Aquaria because again it turns out Captain Mac is her father and she is also trying to save him, so she's traveling the world to do it, and she has ended up in Aquaria. And but first, before we can get her, now that Spencer and the tunnel he's digging is unfrozen, we are finally, even though it's been how long since we were told to go talk to him, we're finally going to go talk to Spencer in his little man cave down here underneath the house.
Yeah, luckily this is the only time you actually have to do this as a story trigger, even though Phoebe, after getting the river coin, Phoebe's like, oh, hey, you should go talk to my grandpa. Because if you're playing it casually and you're not sure where to go, going down to talk to Spencer will tell you where to go next. But this is the only time you have to do this.
Yeah, exactly. So, It's just one of those things that from a speedrun versus casual perspective is pretty amusing because they're like, go talk to Spencer, and you're like, sure, no problem, out, and you just leave and you don't come back for ages. And then Phoebe, for some reason, in the one kind of poor decision she ever makes, comes down and decides to play with something, bomb something, and totally just crashes that tunnel. He's like, we're done. And you're like, and then she leaves. She's like, okay, my job here is done. Bye. And you're like, what are you doing, Phoebe? What have you done? So you have lost access to Spencer's tunnel, but thankfully there was nothing in there, and Spencer's left. So she has not trapped her grandfather once again.
Yeah, GG, Phoebe, GG.
Yeah, exactly. But she's so great all the rest of the time, I'm kind of willing to overlook that one really terrible decision.
It's also really funny. I mean, she just comes flying out of that back room when she bombs it.
Yeah, she's just like, oops, gotta go, guys. So, you may have noticed when Cyclone was in his menu, we have a stack of seeds, which looks like it's a stack of 99, which alone is a lot of seeds. But actually, I believe it's 255 seeds that we have, that we've duplicated. So, we now can use seeds at our, without any sort of discretion. We just use as many as we want. Now, it looks like Cyclone is going past the area he needs to be to pick up the arrow spell. But as I recently learned, if you leave that way and then come back in, you are setting your exit trigger to be that exit, so you don't have to walk all the way out when you're done. You just cast exit and you're ready to go and proceed on. So, but you also get to see your first little glimpse of Doom Castle.
Right.
And it's amazing music.
Yep, I was going to say that really kick butt music that you get in here is, it's so good.
Yeah, the music in this game is just beautiful. And yeah, to answer your question, the ETA for these races is anywhere between 2 hours and 2.5 hours. So, but considering who these two runners are, it's probably going to be closer to the 2-hour range.
Right, and some of the runners will actually, just to go back to that arrow spell, some of the runners will go back and get it with Tristram, but the monster here includes the two that you're not really supposed to have gone into yet, and they're a little bit more difficult to kill, and as we've seen, Tristram is so wonderful as a partner. We don't really want him helping us do that, so we'd rather wait for Kaylee, because she does have that powered arrow spell.
Exactly, and it's not like we don't have to walk past that staircase with both of the partners anyway, so we're not wasting any time by, picking and choosing which partner we want to use.
Right, and so aside from the fact that, as Natara has stated, that Kaylee is looking for her father to help him, we're also trying to get into that giant tree that we encountered with Tristram, and it wouldn't let us in with Tristram. But since Kaylee is very nature-loving, as we saw earlier, she was trying to help the level forest. This tree will recognize Kaylee, and Kaylee will help us get inside of it and move us into the next area.
Yeah, it's always helpful to have a partner who speaks to trees. I don't know about you, but I know I could definitely use that in my life.
Oh, that'd be really nice. I'd tell him to stop pollinating for a while.
Stop, my lawn. It needs to stop, man. So as you can guess, and as we've referenced earlier in the run, both of our runners are now heading towards the giant tree. And this place is a maze, which is filled with so many monsters. And we do have a new movement mechanic, though. So since Tristram, in his actual infinite generosity for once, gave us the dragon claw that he took from the chest right at the beginning of the game. And it works as a kind of grappling hook or hook shot, if you're more familiar with Legend of Zelda. So we are going to be hook shotting all around this dungeon, which is pretty fun. But again, it's a maze, so you kind of have to keep track of where you're going and whatnot. And there's also walls, more climbing walls, which you can do with the upgraded claw.
Right, and the other nice thing about having that claw is when you are using the arrow spell for either the leeches or the mummies or even the boss Skidra for the tree, it does give you a magic boost, which is really, really nice to have. It gives you just that little extra oomph to your attacks.
Yeah, and you want every little bit you can take there. A kind of interesting thing to note, it makes sense, but like the trees and a bunch of things in this particular dungeon are weak to the axe. And logically that makes sense, but games don't always do that, even though it does make sense, so it's kind of neat.
Yeah, it is really nice. The only problem now is, since we did skip that entire fiery thing area that we haven't really seen before, Ben is now ridiculously underleveled, and he's going to be dying a lot. And the more experienced runners will often leave him at low HP for a while, just because we usually do keep Kaylee on manual for most of these fights. Again, because her AI is kind of stupid. But she... if we put her on auto, as soon as anybody drops below half HP, she's going to start using the cure spell. We don't want her to use the cure spell. We just want her to attack stuff and kill it.
Yeah, exactly. So it's why you really just want to pay attention and be curing in between your fights. It may seem like it takes extra time, but trust us, in the long scheme of things, it is much faster.
Oh yeah, for sure. But yeah, the monsters in here, aside from being weak to Kaylee's axe, a lot of them are also going to be weak to the arrow spell, which is why we went and bothered to pick it up. A lot of the monsters in the entire area are actually weak to the arrow spell, so it is very useful.
It really is, and especially since you both have it now, you can just, between arrow, the claw, and the axe, you're just on a murder spree through this poor tree, which, of course, the tree asked you to do. It's really unhappy. We have the, whole Deku tree situation happening in here, where the tree is very unhappy to be infested with monsters, so, you're having a happy time, other than the fact, Ben is also getting destroyed.
It's just so unnecessarily lengthy. That is, again, the only really bad thing about this dungeon. It's just like one slog of monsters, and then hey, guess what? You got another band of monsters to go through, and then another one, and then another one.
Yeah, I find it gets kind of boring after a while, because you're like, oh my god, please stop. Because there's even some rooms where you're, like, one of the last rooms in this tree is literally just a spiral filled with monsters. There's no, like, using your hook shot. There's no climbing. There's just walk around in a circle and fight all these monsters. And it's unfortunate and boring. Even Pazuzu's Tower, for all that we hate it, is a little more interesting.
It also has better music.
Yeah, yes. Yes, it most certainly does. So, as we're seeing with Cyclone here, he has hit the point where these worms can start now coming with the oozes. And unfortunately, the oozes are resistant to magic to the point they will reflect it back at you, which, as you could probably imagine, is not something you want at all. So we have to start kind of paying attention to that and managing our party a little better so we don't accidentally magic those oozes, which I know anyone who's played this, I'm pretty sure we've all done it, and it hurts.
Oh yeah. The problem is that in a lot of other games, usually when a monster reflects magic back at you, it's done at kind of a portion of the amount it would have damaged for. But this one, nope, this one is like, here, have the full brunt of your spell right back at you.
Yeah, and yeah, so it hurts Kaylee a bunch, and your poor Ben, he doesn't stand a chance, so...
not even a little bit.
No, but fun thing is now we get to chop down some mushrooms, because since we don't have it would be a little too meta to have little trees inside of a big tree, so they gave us mushrooms instead. An interesting real life tip for you: if you see mushrooms that look like this in the wild, which have a red cap and white spots, do not touch them, do not eat them. They are extraordinarily poisonous. So look at them, admire them, they're very pretty, avoid them. So this is your real life health tip right here on a Mystic Quest commentary crew.
I'm almost afraid to ask how you know that fact so well. It frightens me.
I used to work on overnight shifts, and I had a team leader who just knew lots about plants, and he told me that one day, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
Okay, I was hoping it wasn't some like terrible story where somebody you knew got poisoned because they just decided, hey, I'm gonna eat mushrooms.
Hey, Mario has that kind of mushrooms. Let's eat mushrooms. Oh, God. No, thankfully, it was just an interesting fact that I got. So I'm spreading the good news to you guys. Leave awesome-looking mushrooms alone. Stick with the more boring ones. They're maybe less poisonous. So, Cyclone's having a bit of a bad time there. Yeah, he did die between getting petrified and then he was in a bit of a stun lock, allowing the enemies to kill him. So that's just something you have to deal with in Mystic Quest. But something we haven't really talked about, but I'm sure you guys have seen or will see, is dying is not something, while it's a waste of time, it's not something particularly to fear like it is in other games, because you get given the option to either give up or not give up. And so long as you always choose to not give up, you will just immediately go back to the beginning of the battle as you were when you had entered it. All the same spells, all the items, you didn't use anything up. So it's incredibly useful that way. So if you're finding something that's a bit difficult, you can just keep doing it over and over until you get it.
Right, and another thing we haven't really talked about is the idea of this resistance glitch that we set up with our partners.
Oh, yes.
So even though you didn't see it at the beginning of the race, each person loaded an endgame save file that has level 34 Phoebe in it. And each partner, technically, when you go through, has a specific set of things that they're resistant to, whether it's fire or sleep or paralysis or whatever. And the people who have lovingly made the route for us have found that endgame Phoebe seems to have the best set of resistances considering what you have to go through in the course of this game. And so your partner, by loading that file and then resetting it and starting a new game, every partner that you have in the course of the run is going to have exactly the same resistances that the endgame Phoebe has.
Exactly. So you can imagine how incredibly useful that will be. So, and thankfully, it's a really easy setup to do. You just need to have a save which has the final partner Phoebe with you in your party, which you get her back right before Doom Castle. And you just load that game, reset. You don't power off the console. You do just want to reset and then start a new game, and that's it. You're ready. You do, if for some reason you have to stop and you want to restart a run or do another run, you do have to physically, you have to either do a hard reset or physically turn off your console in order to reset it. You can't just soft reset again. It will break it, and these fights, you learn, try doing this sometime without the resistance glitch. It's hard. It's really quite difficult.
Right, and it also, in addition to getting the resistances of endgame Phoebe, your partners tend to come a little bit stronger than they normally would in regular game. So they do a little extra damage with their spells. They do a little extra damage with their attacks, and it actually makes things one-shottable that wouldn't normally be one-shottable.
Exactly. So, and we'll take every little advantage that we can have. So, it is great. So now we cut down some more mushrooms and continue walking around, beating more monsters. Commentary's a little hard when you get to the tree because you're just like, and then they killed more monsters, and then they chopped down more mushrooms.
Right, which is why we're talking about other glitches and whatnot in the game that we are actually using.
You can get an appreciation of how not exciting this particular dungeon is just by watching it, because you're just like, oh my god, are we done? You can have huge gaps between players and have them both in the tree at the same time, and you often do.
Yeah. I mean, which is good. We want our players to be as close as possible because, hey, it's a race, right? We want excitement.
So much excitement! That's what we're here for. It's Mystic Quest, right? Excitement, excitement, excitement! Wait.
There also seems to be a small difference in the strats, which I find interesting. So, I've seen a lot of the runners using bombs on the oozes, and I've seen some of the runners using the claw on the oozes, which is actually my preferred method. So, again, in addition to being able to act as a hook shot and giving you a little bit of a magic boost, the claw actually comes with the ability to petrify the things it attacks. Of course, it doesn't do it every time because we're never lucky. But if it actually works, if once the monster is petrified, it's basically the same as a one-hit knockout. So the claw is very, very nice that way, and the oozes are not resistant to that petrification.
They are not, and it's beautiful when it works. You will note now, Cyclone has entered the spiral room I spoke about. Just watch and see how many beautiful encounters he has. And hey, worms are, if you want to eat the worms are high in protein, and trees are fiber. I'm not sure I'd recommend the skeletons, though. There's calcium, so the oozes might, destroy you from the inside. But how about you test it out for us and let us know? Get back to us on that.
Oh my god. You guys are crazy. I love chat.
It's what we do. Yeah. Chat, keep it up. Oh, the last race I commentated, it was literally like a pun competition. Like, there were so many puns, I almost couldn't commentate. I was laughing so much. It was beautiful.
Oh, that's fabulous.
So feel free to get your best puns in here, guys. Now's the time. But it is the second last floor they are on. They have both reached the second last floor, so we are almost done with the tree. Almost.
They have to get through Gidra, though.
Yeah, oh, they can do that. I have faith. See, and it always sucks because, you can't use magic on those oozes, and then sometimes you just miss, and you're like, what? Why am I missing? Come on.
Yeah, it's a pain in the butt, for sure.
Yup. And then, actually, it's not even, I was going to say, and then Pazuzu's Tower, but we have to do Gale Mountain first.
Yeah, well, at least Gale Mountain is short.
I love Gale Mountain. It's so refreshing after this tree, because you're just in this tree for ages, and you're like, please never let me see a tree again. And then you go to Gale Mountain, and you're like, zoop, 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 oh look, boss time. But then you're right into Pazuzu's Tower, so it's kind of like, it's the palate cleanser before more sadness and tears. Of which this game has plenty.
It does, unfortunately. But in all honesty, I find the speedrun a lot of fun, even with all of the RNG that could be in or just ridiculously against you.
Yeah, I find it's harder to get angry when you just go in knowing that this game hates you and everyone, and it's just how this speedrun goes. So,
Cyclone is in that last fight before Gidra. We're almost there!
The very last fight, so it is almost boss time, so we are almost out of this tree, guys. Uh-oh. I worry when one of the runners comes into chat and says whoops. I'm not sure what he's whoopsing yet, but...
Jig.
Oh, there's oozes. I can guess what I thought that. He spelled something, I think.
Maybe.
We're gonna see while we go to Gidra at the same time. Yeah, he did. Now you'll see what happens when you magic the oozes. Bye, Benjamin.
So, level is still somewhat important here, and getting to Gidra with a level 16 is actually really nice, because it kind of gives you just that extra little bit of defense, and it gives you that extra little bit of HP, which makes Ben slightly more difficult to kill. Not impossible, because he's ridiculously underleveled, but I think it's like 60 more HP than he has right now.
I think it prevents him from just being outright one-shot, but yeah, it doesn't protect him from a huge amount, but it's definitely, again, just the ability to not be one-shot is incredible.
Right, because you really need to try to keep both of your party members alive. One, again, as Natari stated earlier, your partner is the only one with life. But two, you need the extra damage that Ben does. I mean, he's knocking out about 1500 HP every time he uses the arrow spell on Gidra.
Yep, so even though he's squishy, very, very squishy, he is useful. So, yeah, you definitely want to keep him as alive as possible, but that requires keeping your partner alive, so, it is a fun game. So, both of our runners are on Gidra, so that means even though Cyclone is still in the lead, there isn't a huge amount of time, only a couple minutes between the two runners, and it all depends on how nice or not Gidra decides to play.
Right, and he keeps knocking Ben out, but he's keeping his Kaylee very healthy.
Oh, and there he's down, so everyone get ready for Goon Kid. It's supposed to say go on kid, but spacing is hard, so it just looks like Goon Kid, which is way more amusing. Go on kid doesn't, make a huge amount of sense either. It's not awful, but Goon Kid just is amazing.
Goon Kid is wonderful.
Goon Kid is the best thing. Goon Kid. So, why is Cyclone walking out? We've got the exit spell now. This seems a little weird.
Well, if you played this game casually, there was that spell on the first floor, kind of on the side, but you had to
Right, what was that spell again?
That was that meteor spell.
Oh man, I like the sound of that.
And it is pretty darn OP for this point in the game. But the problem is, come in here before defeating Gidra, there would be a whole bunch of toads in here, and those toads suck to try to defeat.
Yeah, exactly. So, we ain't got time for that, so we're just gonna chop down mushrooms and get our spell, and now we're gonna exit out. One thing to note, when you do finally get the exit spell, is you have to be really kind of cautious about, who you're curing with and what spells you're using, because it is entirely possible to accidentally use exit, when you're in somewhere, and then all of the monsters you've killed will respawn, so do be careful with that.
Right, and as Cyclone gets into India, he's going to pick up the Cupid Locket, which is going to give us some more resistances to status effects, I believe, sleep at least, and I don't think, is it paralysis? I forget offhand.
I don't know, I just know it's some status ailments, which, hey, we'll take any of those. And then we're going back into Fireburg, which we visited for such a short amount of time, and picking up our bombs. One thing to note here is when you are teleporting around on the different crests, you need to make sure to teleport back before you use the exit spell, otherwise you will exit out of the place where you are. So had he not gone on the crest first before using exit, he would have ended up outside of Fireburg, which is no fun. You'd have to walk back in, and ain't nobody got time for that. So the order of what they do here really doesn't matter so much. Whether they do the Cupid Locket and then get the bombs, or get the bombs and then the Cupid Locket. Usually we talk to Otto first, and he advises that you're trying to get to Pazuzu's tower because you want to help, the crystal. Or actually, you just want to stop the wind from flowing. You want to help with the crystal. And Otto's like, can't help you. My daughter or granddaughter is trapped in this tower, and the wind's too strong for me to create the bridge we need to get there. And so you, being wonderful people and, of course, needing to progress, offer to go to Mount Gale in order to try and stop the wind. So here you are, in the place which is so much shorter and so much nicer. Oh, look, there's the boss right there. So we have to walk around some more to get to him.
At least it's not all the way around and crazy and a million more monsters and that tree. I'm just traumatized. I'm sorry.
It really hits awful. So, and there are plenty of places that you can go and ways to explore for this place. It could be really long, but we know the exact path, and there's nothing that we need off of the path. So we are just making a direct beeline for the boss, going as fast as possible. And there's only a few enemies in our way. And now that we have our beautiful meteor spell, our strategy for all of these fights is arrow on a single enemy, and then meteor if it's a three enemy encounter. If it's only 2 enemies, then it's just meteor and defend. So not much thinking, don't have to memorize enemy packs, it's just meteor, hello.
Yeah, that's always very nice. And I looked up the Cupid Locket because I am OCD about it. So it is silence, blind, and confusion that it prevents against. And blind, not so much here on Mount Gale, but when we get into Pazuzu's Tower, having that blind resistance is going to be super, super important.
It is. I don't know if your partner ever gets blind resistance, and it can be a bit annoying at that point. So you definitely want to make sure to give Benjamin whatever kind of pitiful resistances that he can get to kind of just counteract. So between you can't get both affected. So there are, of course, going to be some exceptions for that, but you do what you can.
Right, and yeah, the resistances for the partner, like, because of the resistance glitch, never actually change as they would if you were just playing the game normally. So we never get blind resistance for a partner, we never get stone resistance for a partner. And there's going to be another item that we can pick up in Doom Castle that's going to help with the stone of Ben and prevent him from getting stoned.
No. What fun is that?
But well, it's not fun for Ben, but it's fun for us because it lets us progress a little easier.
That is right, it does. So, yeah, it's definitely very helpful. So, Cyclone has made it to the boss of Dullahan, and like most of these bosses, he has some friends with him who we are going to get rid of before focusing on him. And the strategy really doesn't change much between trying to get rid of his friends and just attacking him. The strategy is meteor, arrow, seed when necessary.
Right, and some of the runners, and I've started using it too, you can see it on Cyclone screen. We don't use it often as an attack spell, but the heal spell actually, just like Cure and Exit, can be used as an attack spell. And what it'll do is, if it works, it'll inflict various status ailments on the enemy that you're attacking with. And what we would like is for it to paralyze Dullahan to keep him from doing things like Doom Dance, which is the worst enemy idea attack ever.
It is, and from this point in the game on, not only do the bosses start doing it quite a lot, the enemies even start doing Doom Dance, so things start to get really not very nice. But yeah, the heals, I know I saw someone using the heal strategy just as Cyclone is doing the other day, and managed to paralyze Dullahan. He got poisoned as well. I'm sure there were some other status effects in there as well, but nothing we could particularly identify. And yes, I do have to agree, the boss battle music is my personal favorite music track of this game. So chat, tell us what's your favorite music track in Mystic Quest. Because they're all fantastic, but what's your preference?
My favorite is the theme for Mount Gale and Pazuzu's Tower.
Nice, yeah, that's definitely a really good one. Mine's this one and Dark King.
Oh, Dark King is another good one. Doom Castle is my second favorite.
Oh yeah, Doom Castle is great. So
especially because they have that metal remix of it.
Yes. Oh, I can't even. I love those metal remixes. Oh, I should. Yeah. It's good stuff. There's just so much. Just look it up, guys. Mystic Quest Metal. Just look it up. You will not be disappointed. It is beautiful. So we're getting some trends here. Doom Castle, Tristram, bosses, Pazuzu. Yeah. See, all really great.
Yeah, those particular, like those four particular ones that we mentioned, tend to be people's favorite. But I heard a lot of people do like Tristram's theme as well.
Yeah, I like it. It's not one of my favorites, but I can see why it is favorites for people. So we have stopped the wind, and we talked to Otto, and he's like, "Cool, I will create a rainbow bridge, which is invisible, because something we haven't discussed, those clouds." Because we did the glitch in the way we did, the game didn't get the cue it needed to clear those clouds out of our way. So as far as it's concerned, we shouldn't even be here yet. But thankfully, the clouds don't actually stop us from going anywhere. They just make it a little difficult to see. But again, your movement path doesn't change at all. So it is really quite easy as long as you know where you're going. But so Otto builds us a beautiful rainbow bridge, which you will see later, and lets us go to Pazuzu's tower, where get your bets in now, folks, as to what floors our lovely runners are going to get. The big mechanic of this dungeon is that Pazuzu, once you talk to him for the first time, disappears on his wonderful elevator, and you have to find him. There are 7 floors, and we usually talk to him on floor 3, and then he can appear on any floor between 1 and 6, not including 3. And it does actually matter which floor he ends up on, because it will really determine how many enemies you have to fight and how long you have to spend walking around. So the best floor is if Pazuzu ends up on floor 6. The worst floor is floor 2. So we're hoping floor 6s for both of our runners.
Right, and it's very funny. So Elmagus has the excellent guide that most of us use to learn this speedrun. And it actually kind of says in the guide, not verbatim, but you know, if you do see Pazuzu on floor 2, feel free to rage.
Because it is filled with sadness. You have to fight so many encounters and walk so far. I know just by not getting floor 6, you pick up at least a minute or 2, but I think you can pick up as many as 5 extra minutes by having to go all the way to floor 2. Plus, we mentioned experience routing earlier, so that always does not go well when you have to fight like 20 billion extra encounters.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing because everybody has their own little manipulations that they do right before talking to Pazuzu on floor 3. And Cyclone just had like these little jumps, and he had some sword thrusts.
I saw that. I didn't realize most people did something to attempt to manipulate it. I love it. I did like the different jumping. I was like, that's really interesting. Something else that's really interesting, which I don't know that we've seen a lot of, but you'll probably start seeing more. One of the resistances that our partners have gained as part of the resistance glitch is a resistance to drain. So any enemy that does try to drain our partner ends up being drained instead. Your partner gets the health, and the enemy who tried to drain you gets hurt. You'll also note that Cyclone is fighting these, I think they're manticores in this version, in this tower, and they are awful. They are, I think, bar none, the worst enemy in this tower, especially if you get a pack of 3. So you want to kill them as fast as possible using exit and life. And yeah, we have these kind of pathways that we have to take where we fight 3 packs of the same enemy going up, and we climb 2 flights of stairs. And unfortunately, one of these flights is the manticores, and we call it lovingly the Hell Way.
Right, you definitely want to recharge even if you're low at all. You definitely need to recharge your health before going into each one of those fights. They just have such a massive amount of deadly things at their disposal. Their quakes are very damaging. They have the confusion, and it's brutal. It really is brutal if you get caught off guard by them.
Yeah, it absolutely is. So yeah, know what to do for those. Well, know what to do for everything, but don't not pay attention when fighting those, because they will make you very sorry, extraordinarily sorry.
Yeah. So if for some reason our runners are unlucky and they do not get a floor 6, floors 1 and 5 are the next best floors to get, even though it seems like, hey, floor 1, but you have to go all the way back down. But there's actually less encounters to fight if you're going for floor 1, because kind of what we're doing, if we don't see him on 5 and we don't see him on 4, we just make our way down to the second floor, because regardless, we'll have to hit the switch to keep him from moving. So there are switches on the even numbered floors, 2, 4, and 6, that have to be flipped. And Pazuzu has to be caught on an odd numbered floor so that he doesn't go past where you have closed off his elevator. So if he is on floor 1, hitting the switch on floor 2, exiting out of the tower, and then going back in, he'll still be on floor 1 and trapped, which is a very nice mechanic. I did not know that that was such a thing that existed before speedrunning.
Exactly, and you don't have to worry about monsters reappearing because you didn't fight any monsters on floor 1 anyways, and you can actually dodge past all of them except for 1 on your way to Pazuzu. So it is not a problem. Now, right now, we're doing the climb right to floor 7, the top. And then we're going to start making our way down floor by floor, like 1 floor at a time. So until we start our climb back down, we actually will be unable to see whether Pazuzu is on one of these floors that we're on. So they are on a set path until after we check to see whether Pazuzu is on floor 6. After that point, their path can definitely change depending on what floor they get. So again, Cyclone is currently in the lead, but that could change very suddenly depending on what floors each of them get. So, and Jighart does report that in his first 2 races, he had floor 2. So, he's doing on floor 2 right now, so here's hoping. I know I personally, with my 3 races, 2 of them were floor 6, so I'm hoping that luck on these guys.
Oh, I have never had a floor 6 in a race.
It's the only time I've had it. It was twice. I've never had floor 2 ever. So I'm gonna get in a race one day and I'm gonna cry a lot because I'm gonna be like, what am I doing? Where do I go? And I'll cry because, you know, floor 2.
Yeah, so. with floor 2 again, because of the whole idea of having to trap him on an odd numbered floor, not only do you have to go through floor 2 to speak to him after hitting the switch, but then you have to go through floor 3 to actually speak to him and fight him.
Yeah, because when he ends up on the even number floors, he then goes up to the next available floor until he's trapped. So that's why hitting him on an odd number floor other than floor 6 is also better, because he'll just stay there and you fight him.
Right.
So it looks like both of our runners are in the hellway, and oh, that was unfortunate there for Jig, but I think he's still okay. He had a missed life on the last Manticore, with Ben already being dead.
Those white magic spell misses, man. You know, it's very interesting because it seems to be tied in with the accuracy. Even if your character is blinded, for instance, you can absolutely miss using white spells as much as you can miss using attacks.
Yeah, exactly, and it's so that's why you really have to keep on top of those blinds for your partner, because it's while some of the status ailments and things like death will just go away after battle, which is amusing, blind will not. So you do have to keep an eye on that.
Yeah, and unfortunately, another thing that the party members don't pick up as a resistance is to fire. Ironically, because we don't go to the fire area, it's really not necessary. But there are some monsters and there are some bosses that have the ability to use fire on our party. And unfortunately, especially when you get to Doom Castle, they do quite amounts of damage with those fire spells.
Yes. Yes, they most certainly do. So again, it's enemies like that you want to try and kill off as soon as possible.
Wow, these two are like one battle apart at this point.
They are. They're incredibly close, and so both of them are on the roof. And the roof is where you'll end up at the end once you have beaten Pazuzu. But for now, it is simply your gateway to the rest of the tower, because whoever designed this tower should be, you know, fired. Unless Pazuzu wanted a total maze. And then again, he's got an elevator. Why does he care how the floors are laid out?
Get to him. Of course, he's a jerk bird.
Yeah, yes, he is. There are many games with many jerk birds, but my personal most hated jerk bird are the 2 jerk birds, jerk bird incarnations in this game.
Right. So even if somebody does get a floor 6, it is possible that Pazuzu can just be a total jerk bird and not be very nice in battle to you.
Yeah, that is so correct. And his when you get it to Doom Castle, you have to refight all of like the harder quote unquote incarnations of the 4 main bosses of the run, and the Pazuzu's incarnation of Zu or Z, depending on how you choose to pronounce it. He's even worse than Pazuzu, which is impressive because Pazuzu's not very nice.
Well, the problem is that Zu has that horrible Doom Dance spell, and your partner is not resistant to it. And once your partner drops, unless you have maybe 1 or 2 attacks if you're really lucky, that's it. You're done, and you're more than likely going to have to restart the battle.
Yep, and like I mentioned earlier, I once had to fight Zu 11 times, so it happens. He can be just really not very nice with the timing on those Doom Dances, so hopefully not going to be the case here. So they are, if not on the same fight, incredibly close.
Yeah, I think they're still about 1 fight apart, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just looks like they're on the same fight.
Yeah, the other thing is these are more monsters that are actually weak to that life spell, which is kind of funny. So the mages, the Thanatos, the Manticore, all weak to being one-shotted by life. So if you don't actually want to switch between arrow and life between going through the battles, you can get away with it.
Yes, you can. Which works out quite nicely. See again there, Kaylee with the blind, but you've got exit and you've got bombs, so you're not too worried. And as long as you leave your partner on auto, they're just gonna cure themselves anyways. And one thing to note is that they will automatically go for the potions in your inventory, like the heal potions before the heal spell, which in this case works in our favor, because even though we needed those heal potions for that glitch earlier, we're going to be doing another glitch a little later on, not quite as drastic. And it is, we need to have the empty space where those heal potions were. So the fact that Kaylee will just automatically use those is incredibly helpful.
Yeah, I don't know why the partners' AIs are set to do that rather than use their own spells. But I think it varies actually from partner to partner. Like some partners will automatically reach for cure potions instead of cure spells. Some partners will reach for heal potions instead of the heal spell. It's very unusual.
Yeah, it definitely is. And again, it's just the fact that I do like that they programmed all the different AIs differently, but it's also a bit annoying at times because you're like, that doesn't make sense what you've done. Wow, they are literally on the same fight right now.
Yeah, it's crazy, and they're also 1 fight away from picking up the most powerful and very useful spell of the game, which is going to be the Flare spell. Of course, there are going to be things that are resistant to fire, and we can't really use Flare on them. But in this tower in particular, lots of monsters have weakness to the Flare spell. So anytime there is a formation of 2, we're going to Flare and defend with our partner. And when there's a formation of 3, it'll be very similar to what we did on Mount Gale. It'll be a single arrow and Flare spell with Ben. The only exception to that being is when you get stuck with a Beholder. The Beholders, just like the Oozes, have the ability to reflect your magic back at you, so of course the wizard spells, which automatically attack everybody except for Thunder, I think, you cannot use that against them, and it will just reflect back and destroy you.
Yeah, it is. And so now it looks like we're backtracking, but in fact we are heading to where our first switch is to hit to prevent either Pazuzu from leaving or to prevent him from going back up there if we find him on a lower floor. So you need to get ready here for we want to have our PogChamps if he is up on floor. Oh, he's there! Oh, I hope he doesn't forget to get that switch. So we want our PogChamps here for Jighart. He got his floor 6.
Unfortunately, though, because Cyclone did not, baby rages for Cyclone.
So get them all. Just do them all. Just mix them all up there. Oh yeah. We told you. We told him. Good, he did hit the switch. I love how he has the dog there.
It's fantastic.
Oh, my dog. especially where he had floor 2s the last 2 times, so I told him he was due. So now we have the Pazuzu fight. Now you see how much time this is saved, and you will see, especially depending on what floor Cyclone ends up getting, other that isn't floor 6, how much extra time you can really just waste by not getting it here. So the big mechanic with the Pazuzu fight is that every 5 turns he activates a Psych Shield, which will reflect back any magic for that next turn. And one of the biggest things to keep in mind is that Kaylee is your fastest partner, and she outspeeds Pazuzu almost all of the time. So the best strategy for here is the turn after he has Psych Shield, you want to use your seed to refill those your flares and have Kaylee cure. The next turn, you can set Ben to just go right back to his flares. You see the Psych Shield starting there now. And you can have Kaylee cure again or do something else. You do not want to have her attack because she will, again, outspeed Pazuzu and will attack before the Psych Shield is down, and that is sadness and tears for everybody.
Right, and the nice thing is with the auto with your partner, let's say that you put in the command for Ben and he gets hit and destroyed before he gets a chance to get his attack off. If your partner hasn't gone yet, and you saw it on Jighart's screen, Kaylee lifed Ben before he had a chance to go, and Ben will still execute the attack at the end of the turn, which is really nice.
Yeah, which is nice. And now we see our beautiful paint me like one of your French birds pose, which, and unfortunately, Jighart did die.
Oh no.
And again, that's kind of what happens. I'm not sure whether he missed Kaylee's health there or whether it just happened to be particularly low. And then he just one-shot Ben, so it's why Pazuzu can be a bit difficult. But again, he has a sizable lead right now, so 1 or 2 deaths to Pazuzu isn't going to be a huge deal, but hopefully it won't be too many.
Right, and it looks like Cyclone has a floor 5 Pazuzu, so that's going to require him to go and flip the switch on floor 4 so that Pazuzu cannot go down past floor 5, and then unfortunately he's going to have to make his way all the way back up and around on the roof, and then back to floor 5 where he came into the roof to begin with. It's going to take him a few extra minutes. So, as Natara said, 1 or 2 deaths shouldn't be too detrimental to Pazuzu, but if it's any more than that, then we're back to having a really close race again.
Yeah, and again, this is still not decided because between the random RNG, with all the different battles coming up, and the fact they still have to go through the refight of this boss, who again is incredibly trolly with Doom Dances, this is still anybody's race, and Cyclone didn't get a disastrous floor. Again, it is taking him a while longer because he does have to flip this extra switch, fight these extra enemies, and then go back to floor 5. But it is still extra, it is extra time, so, but they're not as far apart as they could be, so.
Yeah, this is, again, as she said, it really depends on the twin head Wyvern, and it also is going to really depend on what Zoo does.
I do want to answer the question by Dark Wolf Insanity. There have been races. This just happens to be our last week, and it was an extra week that was added due to GDQ being last week. So while there were races happening last week during GDQ, or not last week, the week before, they weren't being restreamed, and then there weren't many races happening last week, but there have been races going on. It's just we're near the end, and between GDQ and the different racers' schedules, there haven't been a huge amount of races. But yeah, there have been a few races this week, in fact.
Right, and this is the last of the group races, I'm pretty sure, and this is actually the deciding match for Group F, because both Jighart and Cyclone have 1 win and 1 loss, so depending on who wins this is going to determine who gets to make it into the bracket round.
Ooh, that was close for Jig there, but he's doing fine. Again, you just see how Pazuzu is just a jerk. He is a jerk bird. Yeah, he's definitely less dangerous than Zoo. I absolutely agree with that. But you see the problems that Jig is having with Pazuzu here. Imagine that, but worse, and that is Zoo. So
yeah,
Just to put it.
The only nice thing, Zu has a lot less HP than Pazuzu does. So even though he's a major jerk, he at least goes down faster.
Yeah, he does. And one thing I want to note is while the Psych Shield is up, you can't attack with magic, but you can still physical attack. So if you don't actually need the cure, you can just have like Kaylee attack with her axe and stuff, and it's better than nothing and does a bit of extra damage.
Right. And having your partner be petrified, which is another big danger with Zu, is a problem because Zu will always outpace Benjamin, except for the turns where he is either putting up or taking down his Psych Shield.
Oh, and there we saw that Psych Shield counter. Oh no!
And now the two racers are in almost the same place because Cyclone is just about to go into his Pazuzu fight.
Yes, he is. See, this just goes to show how this game works. Pazuzu, man. It's not just the... and this is why this tower is so bad, because not only is the tower itself awful, Pazuzu himself is just terrible. And Zu's even worse. So, it is not an easy fight, and even though some runners make it look easy, often that simply does come down to RNG. Well, Cyclone, that was a bad start for Cyclone. With Kaylee dying that early in the run, you saw him trying to run. He knew he couldn't run, but when you lose your partner that early in a boss fight, you're just best off to die, because you just want that fight to end so you can start again and keep going.
Yeah, unfortunately there's no mechanics to just say, hey, I want to restart the fight now.
Nope, you just gotta hope you die. So I don't even think you can attack yourself to help out. So yeah, just trying to run means you're not wasting time with animations or anything. You just get a quick message and then you let Pazuzu just end it quick.
Hopefully, anyway.
Well, yeah, if you're lucky. So, definitely see how this goes. Yeah, Jig making sure to cure because his Kaylee was getting kind of low there. Yeah, Pazuzu most certainly is giving Jig the business.
Yeah.
This bird does not mess around.
Yeah, the only consistency between the AI of characters is the fact that when they are below half health, that's when they'll automatically use cure on themselves, with the exception of Tristram because he doesn't have a cure spell. But in certain fights, there is a chance for the spells or whatever to do more damage anyway. So you might want to cure up yourself manually, or there is a chance, even though you can't do it because sucks to be us, the enemy magic can crit you.
Yes, I most certainly can. And Jig is, he's playing it fast and loose here a little bit with Pazuzu, but so far it's paying off. Yeah, occasionally there definitely is some execution error, and that can be really easy with Pazuzu, especially, or Zu, when you're just fighting them over and over and over. Sometimes you just get a little twitchy with the fight itself, so, yeah, so that's kind of what they're doing here, but Jig seems to be doing okay there right now. Oh, he has Sad Frog.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Cyclone is on the last stage, so let's hope.
Yeah, he is having a pretty decent time there with Pazuzu. I'm just, every hit, I'm just like, is he dead this time? Yeah, and there he goes. So Cyclone is in the lead even after the floor 6. So that a bit of unfortunate luck and stuff for Jig. But he did also defeat Pazuzu now. So even though Cyclone is in the lead, this is still a race, guys. This is still so incredibly close.
We have a race, ladies and gentlemen.
I love it. I love it when things are this close. So you will note that not only they're getting their crystal now, and that's nice. And what's even nicer is there's this nice shiny chest there, which Habit and playing this game should tell us has a coin. We don't need no coin. We got the coin. By doing our duplication, we've got the wind coin already, so we don't even waste time picking it up. We just leave.
Right, so now we're going to execute the glitch that Natara was speaking about. So again, we're going to take advantage of that fact that we can buy 0 of items. We're going to buy 0 cures, but we're not going to use them yet.
Please, please, do not use them yet.
We need to wait until the sandwich comes back to us. So our sandwich comes back to us, and And Otto's like, hey, I can make a longer bridge so that you guys can go take care of the water situation and save Captain Mac's ship. But I need some Thunder Rock, and that's exactly what we're going to do by underflowing those cure potions. We're going to get Thunder Rock and the gas mask and the one of the keys to get into the house in Fireburg and something else I forget. The magic mirror, there we go. To get... Look, I've got Thunder Rock! Now you can make the bridge, because if you didn't do this, you technically have to go all the way back to Fireburg, get the Thunder Rock from Ruben's dad, and then come all the way back to India, but I got no time for that.
Nope. One thing you want to make sure, though, is you cannot and must not initiate that glitch before Ruben has left your party. Or, sorry, before Ruben has entered your party and Kaylee has left. Because the next step in this process is you need to talk to Kaylee and get her dad's hat, which triggers your access to the boat. But if she's still trapped in your party when you give the Thunder Rock to Otto, you have soft-locked the game. You cannot proceed any further because you may have the right item, but you don't have the Captain Cap, and you can't get it because you can't talk to a partner who's in your party. So you are done, and I don't know about anyone else, but I've certainly done that in a run before, and you're just like, oh, that was unfortunate. That's the end of my run, because unless you have saved at some point in the run, which due to the fact you can't really lose permanently any sort of battle, there's no reason to save. Your run's done. Your last save was non-existent, so you're done.
Yep.
So don't do that. You only do that once before you learn. Never do that.
So I believe that Captain Mac plays a much more integral role to the story than we are led to believe. Like, even Pazuzu talks about Captain Mac when you approach him, like, you'll never rescue Captain Mac. And I believe that this entire story and this entire problem was caused by the fact that Mac forgot his captain's cap.
Dude, you cannot forget your captain's cap. When will you learn? You ruin worlds doing that stuff.
Like, you set in motion an entire, scenario for the Dark King to come along and just send his minions out and kidnap and... just because you couldn't be bothered to grab your captain's cap.
Exactly. And to answer your question, we are still in the group stages, but we're at the end. I'm not even sure if we have any races past this one, but this is the last one for this particular group. And I know there's a bunch of other groups that have finished up. And this is our last week for doing the group stages. So if this isn't the last one, there's not many left. And then we go into our single elimination. I'm not sure if that starts next week or the week after, but we're heading into the exciting stuff.
Yeah, it should be very interesting because a lot of the top people that run this game are in it.
Yeah, I definitely personally cannot wait because the top 2 runners of each of the groups moves on to the single elimination. So, yeah, that puts a lot on the line for some people, so we'll definitely see. But this ship also, kind of in the way Gale Mountain was after the tree, this ship is just such a relief after the awful, awful nature that is Pazuzu's Tower, because not only is it short and you're not fighting much and nothing particularly is difficult, there is no boss. So you're just having a nice little stroll, ignoring all of these monsters, just heading directly to where you want to go, and then you're done. Yeah. You pick up your chest, get up your last armor upgrade, the Gaia armor, and ta-da! We found Captain Mac.
And somehow Kaylee was following us anyway? She could have just come with us?
Yeah, she ain't got... She's helping people before then. And for those of you who like Tristram's music, you're welcome. We ordered it just for you. So apparently Tristram and Spencer are bros now, so they show up and they're just like, hey, what's up? We finished doing whatever we were doing, and now you should go talk to Mac. He seems to have info. And you're like, okay. So, but who else is here but everyone's favorite Phoebe? but our poor Sandwich is still a little downtrodden and soggy from his last adventure, so he's heading up to have a bit of a rest while we get Phoebe, who this is actually the final form of Phoebe. So she does technically not have the resistance glitch because the resistances we were glitching into effect were her resistances. So yeah, everything is good. We have our best partner back. We talked to Captain Mac, who advised us that there's actually a prophecy that all of this was set into effect. All of the bad things in the world are happening because of the Dark King. So we have to go and defeat the Dark King in order to fulfill this prophecy and save the world. So he was a nice guy and let us use our boat, or let us use his boat. And off we go. Note, if you're mashing A here, you can go right back in and direct the boat to go right back to Windia. Don't do that. That's a waste of time.
Oh my gosh, Mac is just trying to cover up for his loss of the captain's cap, please.
Yeah, it really is kind of like this whole game, truly, like you said, is just because he does not have his hat. You're like, dude, is one hat so important? Get a new hat. Come on.
So, on this bottom floor here, it actually has a bit of the original bone dungeon that we went into. But what it has in the lower right-hand corner is the Aegis Shield. And the nice thing about the Aegis Shield, as I had mentioned earlier, is it's going to help protect Ben from paralysis and stone from the enemies. So a lot of the more experienced runners, especially if they're going for a PB, will most likely not pick it up. But in a race setting, it tends to be a really nice safety item to have. And as we go through this particular floor, we are going to end up running into the other incarnation of these Flamosaurus, which will be the Skullosaurus. And as we saw with the Minotaur, some of the bosses aren't quite coded correctly, and luckily for us, Skullosaur is one of those bosses.
Yes, he is, and it's a bit of a beautiful sight to see when you see it. You're just like, really? You're supposed to be tough. He's not. So, interestingly enough, both of the runners chose to pick up the Aegis Shield, which, again, often when behind, they don't always do that. I haven't seen it often in many of the races, so that keeps them on an even footing here. So it's, again, just going to depend on enemy RNG and how these boss fights go. Because even though these bosses should be super easy with the glitch for especially the first two, sometimes the guys that come with them are just not very nice and just kind of wreck your day, as these ninjas seem to be doing for some reason.
Right, the ninjas can duplicate themselves, which will actually spread out the magic damage between them even more so, and make it even more difficult for you to get rid of them in one shot.
Yep, and right now we are using that wonderful duplicated sky coin that we created, and it led us right into the next area. And as you'll see, this looks like the ice area we were in. It does not use the invisible enemy mechanic, or maybe it does because we have the mirror now, so we can just see them. But it does continue with its using the switches, and even though it's just a floor, it's not very big, it is a maze in here. So you really have to keep an eye on where you're going and making sure you're hitting all of the switches along the way. Otherwise, you will have to backtrack quite a bit. So, yeah, I personally find the ice floor the hardest to navigate and remember where it is I'm supposed to be going.
Yeah, because there is definitely a very specific order that you should hit the switches in for optimal speed through the floor.
There is. And when it comes to a lot of the different encounter packs here, it's gonna depend on which floor you're on as to what moves you're going to particularly do, but often you have to kill the one ninja with thunder and then you use flare to just take out the rest. So, or you used flare and white to kill them all. So those are the kind of two main strategies you're going to see for most of the enemies on all of these floors we're going to be doing.
Although some people like to do the swaggy blizzard instead of the thunder.
I like it because it has the snowman. I saw that in a race I was watching the other day. I was like, there's snowmen. Why is there snowmen? Swagtastic. And Cyclone has a dead partner, but thankfully the enemies were almost dead anyway, so not a big deal. And as we've seen, all your partner or whoever's dead at the end of a battle gets automatically resurrected. So you just have to make sure they're full health, otherwise you're going to have a very sad next battle.
So, that's going to become my new favorite word, auto-magically. I like that.
Oh, right? I stole that one from someone else. I can't even remember who, but it's a fun word. Something else, which I'm sure you guys have all noticed, but we haven't pointed out, is we've talked about boss refights, as in, refighting bosses, but most of the kind of mini bosses, or not the 4 main bosses that you fight, they all come back as enemies as you go on. So, like you're seeing here, we're fighting the freezer crabs, and you have the different squidite forms and things like that. So it's always interesting. They don't have as many of the kind of I've been hurt animations as they do when they were bosses, and but they're a lot of fun to see. You're like, oh, it's you again and again and again. How many times do I have to kill you?
I think they might have the animations, but I think because we're just so overpowered with the light and the flare, we don't get to see them.
That is entirely possible as well. And exactly what I mentioned earlier is something that Jighart did, and I've done this, is why I know, is you just gotta remember where all of those switches are and when you're supposed to hit them. Yeah, so that particular switch he had to hit was right at the beginning, so he has to walk all the way back. Again, totally doable, but this is going to put him a little further behind.
Right, and as Cyclone gets into the Stone Golem fight here, this is another one of those bosses that's not coded to actually have the boss code in it. So whereas we could use either life or exit on the first boss because it was also considered an undead type kinda, only exit will work in this case. But the problem is Ben got one shot because, god damn it, Ben.
Yeah, something I find really interesting. Oh, that's intriguing, the HP. Something really interesting about these fights is that if you have an attack queued up with Ben, and you have your partner set to auto, and Ben dies before his turn, your partner will usually bring him back before his turn, so he will still use his move. It's a really interesting bit of coding. So long as the timing works out, you don't have to re-go in and, have to re-enter it. It's just like, oh, he's alive, here you go. He'll still do it even though he was dead.
Yep, and now Cyclone is coming to this fire floor. I never saw any fire in the game, did you?
No, me neither. I don't know why they just added this in the last place like this, but it looks kind of neat. The music's kind of cool.
Well, that's good at least, but all these weird Medusas, and there's some djinns, like, where did they come from?
I don't know. This game is just messing around now. It's just like, what even? So, as I'm sure you guys guessed, this is the volcano area that we skipped because we ain't got time for volcanoes. And I'm not sure if all the jumping and stuff is in there, but it certainly is on this floor. So it's kind of a mini maze, which is really not a maze. It's actually pretty incredibly easy to navigate where you're jumping and using your dragon claw to kind of get around. So
right. The actual lava dome is in itself quite a mazy thing because if you've ever played it 100% or casually, there is one way you have to go to hit a door switch, and then a completely different way that you have to go to get to the door that you just opened. And if you happen to go the wrong way first and you get to the door, have fun going all the way back.
Kind of like with the Ice Palace, they do a bit of that too. Mystic Quest, for all again that it's a beginner game, can be really incredibly mean sometimes. You're like, really, Mystic Quest? What did I ever do to deserve that? So Cyclone is going to fight this Cerberus here, the pack, even though that's not the direction he's going. And the reason for that is that's the way he is going to leave the floor. So by fighting them now, when he's done the next boss, he can just walk out. He doesn't have to worry about fighting any more enemies. He can just leave.
Right, so the Twin Head Wyvern that's coming up has, of course, because it's a fire area, he has the fire spell, and as I had mentioned before, we don't have any resistance to fire. So watching Phoebe's health is going to be extremely important in this battle coming up, because usually, like, yeah, we can kind of let it get to half. You can't really do that in this battle because the fire can do almost 800 damage to Phoebe. So you really have to keep her health up, especially for the first few animations of the twin head. Once the first head is gone, the fire occurs, but less often. So it becomes a little safer after that, but it's still very touch and go for the first few rounds.
It is, because when your partner who has like almost double your HP can be two-shot, that is scary.
Right, so these double attacks that you see on Cyclone screen are actually one of the nicest attacks that the twin head can do to you.
Yep. So, yeah, you are definitely trying to keep Ben alive, because where he does some of the majority of the damage for this fight, you definitely also want to keep everyone as cured up as you can, and work hard to get rid of that head, because like RPG Chick said, you want to get rid of that fire spell, or really, reduce its, prevalence as much as possible.
Right, and the strats on this boss will vary depending on the runner. A lot of people have started to use the meteor spells because it does do more damage even though the animation is longer, and then switch to the arrow spell. The flare spell, it's fire based, it's not going to work on a fire enemy. So meteor, which is earth, will do much more damage, but again, like I said, the animation is a little bit slower. But once you run out, it's like, hey, well, I don't really feel like taking a turn to use seeds, so I'm just going to switch to arrow, which will still do quite a substantial amount of damage.
And we're seeing, and Cyclone got through Twin-Head Wyvern, which is great, because he is quite a tough boss, because he is the first free fight who is not glitched, so you actually have to fight him properly, and like was previously mentioned, he's a jerk. So, not quite to Jerkbird levels, but he's definitely not very nice. So, Cyclone is done with the fire area and is heading to the last floor, which is going to be the Pazuzu refight floor of Zoo. So again, he might be in the lead now, but Zoo is not very nice at all, and there are quite a few encounters that he has to get through in order to even get there.
Right, and of course, just like every other floor here, this floor is also relatively mazy as well. And there are 2 levels to this floor. On the bottom level, if you step off, you just fell back into the lava dome area, and you cannot fall from the top floor, luckily. But if you are not careful, you can fall back down and you have to go back up again, which, even though you don't have to refight anything, it's still going to take up some time.
It definitely does. So you'll see that there are different edges to the platforms without walls. So the ones which look like they have kind of a squiggly edge, those ones you cannot fall off of. But if it looks like it's just kind of a straight blank edge, you can fall down. And you definitely do not want to waste your time there. And even though this Pazuzu's tower floor here is only 1 floor, they managed to do a really good job of making it incredibly maze-like, kind of like the ice floor. So while there might not be switches or anything here, between concentrating on not falling down, the different staircases and kind of bridges, and there are underneath platforms, like tunnels you can take. So just knowing where you can go, and there's a couple of enemies here which look like they're in the way, but are actually completely dodgeable. So knowing where those are as well is very helpful.
Right, and part of the thing that makes this floor also a little bit harder than the other floors, there are more Cerberuses, which can both stone you and use their iteration of Doom Dance, just a Doom spell to kill you in 1 shot. But you also have the formations with the Chimeras, and the formations with the Chimeras cannot be flared. The Chimeras are resistant to the fire spell of Flare, and therefore you have to remember to switch to the Meteor spell to get rid of them faster.
Yeah, so it is, incredibly unnice, this floor, just in general. So you see the Cerberuses down in the tunnel below, next to the windows, just doing their little jig. They're there, they're taunting you. They're dancing for your failure.
Yeah, and I think another thing we didn't mention, when you defend with your partner, which is what Cyclone did in that fight, if you defend Ben with your partner absorbs everything up until the point where they can't any longer, of course. So if they use Quake, it only affects Phoebe. If they use a double attack, it would only affect Phoebe. So even if it's something that's supposed to target both of your party members, if Phoebe is defending Ben, it will only affect her and only for the same damage it would have in the first place. And it buys Ben some extra time to get his flare or whatever spell off, just to get rid of the enemies a little bit easier.
Yeah, exactly. So we're entering our first tunnel here. I think this is the only tunnel we have to properly go into. Thankfully.
Yeah, the other one is just a short little hop.
Yeah. Which is fantastic because we ain't got time for that. So yeah, this next encounter, so we have here the Chimeras and the Cerberus, and that battle's fine. But it looks like there is another battle below with the Dullahan refight monster. I think Thanatos they're called. And you can actually skip that fight because of the placement of the stairs in that tunnel. So it's really important to know that because, again, right now you want as little HP as possible. Or not HP, levels as possible. You want to be ideally between levels 21 to 23, though you can deal with level 24 and I think level 25 with slight strategy modifications. Any more or any less than those levels, and you are going to have a big problem with the final boss and the glitch that we will be using to defeat him.
Yeah,
yes.
And it also makes this place a lot riskier if you're at like level 18 or 19.
Yes, it really incredibly does. And so this is another reason why which floor you get in Pazuzu's tower can be really incredibly dangerous and bad, because if you get one of the particularly bad floors, you end up getting a lot more experience than you may want. So it could end poorly for you. But so far so good for both of our runners. And Cyclone here fighting the last battle, I believe, before Zoo. And as has kind of been mentioned in chat and we've talked about before, Zoo is the final deciding factor for this run. He is a jerk like Pazuzu, but a bit worse because he now also has Doom Dance, and he does his Psych Shield after 4 turns. Now, Phoebe is generally slower than Zoo when it comes to the Psych Shield. However, she has been known to outspeed him on occasion just when you're expecting her not to. So it is usually best to play safe with her on the Psych Shield turn, but we'll see what these runners choose to do.
Right, and it also comes with the Chimera and the Thanatos. And even though Chimera doesn't have that Doom Dance, the Thanatos does, and they can wreck your fight even before it starts.
Yes, they most certainly can. So, yeah, definitely not very nice. So let's see how good it is. And some of it has to do with, player execution, and a lot of it comes down to just simply the RNG of Zoo, like there with Cyclone. Like, I'm really not sure that there was anything he could have done to avoid that. It was not very nice at all. So, we'll see if this goes a little better.
Doom Dance just missed Phoebe at the beginning of that fight.
Didn't miss that time. Yeah, I wish we could just... It is the same thing. Back when these games were coming out and being translated... Wow, another death for Cyclone. Yeah, when they were coming out, they didn't want any sort of religious symbolism. So things like holy got moved to white and crosses got changed to other things. That stopped happening a little later on. But yeah, a lot of these early SNES games have whites there. And you're like, okay, cool. We all know and understand that it's the holy spell, so... Yeah, you guys are already starting to see why we consider Zoo to be the true, not just decider of the run, but the true jerkbird. Like, these guys, they're at the same spot now because of their constant deaths with thing. Cyclone is like a turn or so ahead. Or no, he's ahead because Jighart has a dead Phoebe. But that could very quickly turn around. Depends on the game as to some of that, but some of the games they did remove that stuff.
Yeah, Cyclone has a dead baby too.
Yep, so there you go. So now Jighart's back in the lead. Like, literally, Zoo's the decider in this race, so we're gonna see. It is entirely possible that they could still end around the same time, and it's just gonna be pure execution at that point. But right now, it's RNG. It's just how jerk is the jerk bird going to be? And right now, the answer is very. Extraordinarily very.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't even. Wow. It almost looks like the same thing is happening on either screen right now. I love it. Except, we're seeing white on one side and flare on the other.
My gosh.
Yeah, making sure to keep up with the cures there, because even though Doom Dance, well, being cured up doesn't matter for that. As you're seeing, Pazuzu also just hits for a lot. If he just wants to, hit you in the face, that's it, you're done. Yeah, it's sadness. Wow.
And now Cyclone is in the lead again.
Zoo is in fine form today, guys. This is a true demonstration to kind of end or almost completely end our tournament, to show just what kind of magic Zoo gets up with.
Oh my god, Cyclone with the double miss on the Doom Dance. Oh my god.
I've seen people in these races both get Zoo first turn. But it's so RNG heavy with those Doom Dances, especially with Thanatos also having it. There we go. What you just have to hope for is that if you're going to get the circumstance, Cyclone beat Zoo! So, this is almost certainly decided, but we will still see.
Right, because the Dark King can still technically troll you a little bit.
Yes, he can. So, yeah, with Zoo, you just want to get out as soon as possible. And if you're gonna do the BS awful things at the beginning with like the Doom Dancing and whatnot, you want him to do it as soon as possible, because if you're gonna die, you just want to die at the beginning of the fight so you can just jump in and restart. So Cyclone is now heading to the last bit. He is making sure to talk to this statue, because if you do not talk to this statue, you cannot proceed. It unlocks the next stuff.
I've done the statue skip a few times.
I think we all have. And we don't need any of those treasure chests. We're too busy. We've heard that this poor Dark King, he's hurting, and we're here to help. We have all the cure spells, and we're going to give them to him because we're kind and generous people. And
Hearts need some healing here.
Oh yeah. So what we're doing here is we're taking advantage of an HP underflow glitch, where I'm not sure on the full mechanics of it, but he seems like for some reason when you use cure on him with Ben, it does damage, and it does a lot of damage. And then with Phoebe, you cure, but you're curing him back just enough to trigger the fact that he is for him to recognize that he's taken enough damage. And we basically repeat this process of cure to damage, cure to kill. And Cyclone has officially finished with a final time of 2 hours, 11 minutes, and 16 seconds, according to SRL.
GG for Cyclone.
GG.
That means that he will be moving on to the next round of this tournament.
Yes, he will. And I do want to note that Jighart is still working on Zoo, because I really wasn't joking when I said I fought him 11 times once. He is a jerk. He is not very nice at all.
Well, it looks like we have Cyclone in the waiting room if he wants to speak to us.
Yeah, we totally do. Let's bring him in here. Hello, welcome.
Hi.
Hi. So how you feeling? Yeah, good. Congrats.
Yeah, GG on that race. My God, you guys switched hands so many times.
I only had the chat open, and I thought for sure as soon as I saw you had a 4-6, I was done.
Yeah, definitely. And unfortunately, he had some Pazuzu problems, and then both of you had pretty equal Zoo problems, though. Jighart is currently in the lead for Jerkbird problems, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
Because somebody was saying in chat he was one battle behind me going into it.
Yeah, he was. He was on the Chimera fight when you were on the Thanatos fight.
Yep, so you were incredibly close, but unfortunately, while you both had a lot of problems with Zoo, he is still fighting him.
Oh no.
Jighart is in true Jighart form today, and Pazuzu basically gave him some of the same problems. So, how did you feel about that run as you were going through? Kind of walk us through it there.
I felt like throughout the entire game, the random encounters wanted me dead.
Yes.
There was so many, like, I don't know, it just killed me so much.
Yeah, we were definitely noticing that, especially near the beginning. I do want to note Jighart has finally, not only has he finished Zoo, he's taken out some rage on those pillars. Very well done, sir. Yeah, no, we definitely noted multiple times how much those encounters, especially in the early game, did not like you at all.
I think in Pazuzu's tower, until I started going down, I had to menu after every single battle. There was one time I tried not to, and I died.
Oh, no. Yeah, that sounds about right. But yeah, that was an incredibly close race for both of you. Or for a lot of it.
Yeah, you guys, like, sometimes you were in the lead, sometimes Jake was in the lead. It just kept switching back and forth for quite a while.
So are you feeling prepared in order to go to the next stage of the tournament, the single elimination?
Not as prepared as I can be. I got a PB last night, so...
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, it was a 202. Zoo kind of just handed me the fight, though. He used Doom Dance once, it missed, and every other turn he used Psych Shield.
Well, that's beautiful when he does that. See, and that's just to show for people who are watching this or listening to this for the first time, that's just the sort of RNG you can get with Zoo. Sometimes he plays nice, and sometimes he hates everybody. Yeah, Jighart is definitely the winner of this round.
Well, in the end, Mystic Quest always wins.
Yeah, that is correct. But at least you're at the end here of your group stages.
Yeah, I was really worried going into this. Because Jighart's been putting up some really good times.
Yeah, no, definitely. And he has also officially finished. His time is 2:15:01, which is a new PB, or at least a new SRL PB. I don't think it's an actual run PB.
Yeah, but, it looks like his clock is in the red, so it's probably not.
Yeah, so GG to him. We'll see if he wants to join us here in the commentary. See how he felt. See if he can give us some true Jighart rage here.
Yeah, seriously, he's so entitled to that Jighart rage after that.
Goodness, yeah, absolutely. I liked how he threw bombs at the pillars. Feels like what I would do after a fight like that. You're like, take this Zoo and your pillars too. And there he is. Wink. Hi, Jighart.
Hello.
How much rage are you feeling right now?
I haven't broken anything yet.
I'm sorry I took his name, and he must have been nice to me.
Oh well.
Yeah.
Jighart wins.
Yeah, Jighart usually does win. So how did you feel about your run in general, though, other than, both of the Jightarts?
That was pretty good. I was actually on PB pace at the beginning of Doom Castle. I did a couple of sad mistakes, like locking the ice puzzle. I was fairly... I don't know, I wasn't very concentrated. That also costed me a few minutes on Pazuzu because I forgot he had his side shield up. Otherwise, it was pretty good. I haven't trained at all. I haven't played since last week, so I'm okay with that kind of play without any practice, honestly.
That's totally fair. Yeah, that's good. Are you happy, relieved, a little disappointed to be done with the group stages now?
A bit disappointed. I was out of the tournament for Spammer yesterday, out of this one today. I felt like there's a pattern, but that's cool. I mean, I didn't expect to move on in the first place, so having this kind of race, it's really good. I'm happy about that.
Oh, well, that's good at least. And yeah, unfortunately, those sort of things seem to come in a row. You're just like, I'm going to get kicked out of multiple tournaments all in a week.
That's RNG for you.
Yeah.
Unfortunately so, yeah.
It is. Well, great. So is there anything either of you would like to talk about in terms of your runs or your experience so far with this tournament in general?
Jig, just to let you know, I was more worried about this race than my prior 2 races. Seeing the times you were putting up before we raced.
I saw you actually PB'd yesterday. I saw your time like 2 or 3 hours ago, and I was like, wow.
Yeah. But like, yeah, yesterday Doom Castle just it gave everything to me. Like that was a 202. I even picked up the Aegis shield.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you both actually picked up the Aegis shield, so we were wondering whether one of you was going to get a kind of a bit of time bonus for not picking it up, but no, you both went for it.
I know it helped me. I think in the round that I beat Zoo, the Chimera tried to stone me.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, definitely not very nice. Well, thank you both for your run today. That was definitely a really exciting race to watch, and we'll definitely be looking forward to watching your future races there, Cyclone.
Thank you.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the bracket round goes. My apologies for speaking over you as well.
No worries. Just good luck for the rest of the tournament. I hope you go far in there.
Thank you.
But yeah, you guys totally should follow these 2 guys. They did some nice hard work for you today. They did a kick butt race for you. So make sure to give them both a follow, okay? I think we have coming up in about less than 10 minutes. I believe there is a Metroid Rando race coming up.
Yeah, that has been going on all day. So yeah, check that out either here or at Speed Gaming 2. And yeah, check it out, enjoy, and look forward to more Mystic Quest races coming up. Keep an eye on the schedule and watch it all for some real incredible races to come.
And have a wonderful rest of your weekend, everybody.
Bye!